Alright, so this video was supported by Acmer. They reached out and sent me a product, and normally, I integrate the product, but I don't really dedicate an entire video to it. This time I just got really excited because it's a new tool that I've never used, and the entire video is about that product. But yeah, it just looks like I'm shilling it really hard, but it was just having fun. Alright, so this is where we left off in the project of the desk setup build. I actually removed the teleprompter on the left side, replaced that with the audio interface, which was initially above the camera over here, but didn't really look that good. And so, yeah, in that position, it also works better because I can keep my hand on my mouse while I adjust the audio. But in this video, we're kind of focusing on cable management or cable tagging, I suppose you could call it. So the issue that I kept running into with the setup is that it runs 10-meter long cables to the computers, which are on a different kind of cart, on a different type of setup. And that's really useful because you can push it into a different room and get rid of the noise or get rid of the heat, especially for the recordings like these, because those computers make quite a lot of noise when we're recording these videos. So it's best to get that far away from the microphone. So what I've been doing up until now is like tagging them with painter's tape and just writing on them. But those tags rip off as well when you reroute them. And in general, they just don't look that good. And so kind of as a coincidence, Acmer actually reached out and offered to send me the smallest portable laser engraver, which I thought was kind of cool. Like, I've never worked with laser engravers before. So yeah, I accepted that offer. They sent it over. You can get it in two versions actually, with a 2.5 watt laser or a 3.5 watt laser. You just snap it on there with a little screw mount thing. It's really small. Like, you can actually put it inside of a backpack if you wanted to, which is really nifty. So I didn't do any kind of calibrations or anything like that. I just turned it on, figured out how the software worked, which it uses third-party software. And initially, it was really daunting to me. I was like, oh, I've got to figure out something new again. But it is really easy. You just drag the image in there that you want to laser engrave. And the first thing I tested out was on a mask, and it actually went straight through the mask, which was pretty cool. I didn't know that these things could be that strong, so to say. The second thing I tested was a banana, because I was really curious what it would do if you'd have it on your skin. I think a banana is a pretty good indication of that. It didn't leave that big of a mark at first, but then after time went by, they became more clear, so it actually did burn the banana's shell. But after a while, I started wondering, like, how can we use this laser engraver for functional things, right? And one of the things I really wanted to test is to see if we could engrave our cables, so that when we reroute them or when we need to troubleshoot stuff, it's really clear which cable goes where. My brain is kind of weird. Like, I don't really remember numbers or words or people's names. I work really great with images. I can remember any kind of image that has ever like popped into my brain. I know that a cable engraved with a bear claw goes to my monitor, for example. I started engraving all of my cables with icons, essentially. And these icons aren't really related to the things that they're plugged into, right? Which is kind of strange, but each icon has its own character to some extent. And for some reason, when it's a character in my head, it works better. I'm actually fairly sure that this is going to be like an SOP, like a standard operating procedure in pretty much all of the builds that I do from now on. Like, just as soon as I get cables in, mark them with some kind of icon, because it saves so much time. Even in like rerouting the cables on this setup this time, I had some trouble figuring out which cable went into the display and which one went into the camera. And, it sounds like a really small thing, but when you do this as often as I do, like rebuilding setups as often as I do, it becomes really infuriating. And just to save me some amount of misery, so to say, it's worth it for me. What I also really like to do is that my great-granddad, he always marked his initials on all of his tools. And for some reason, that really makes you respect the tools more. And so first I kind of had to figure out when I started building this thing. So I don't think I've ever really told that story of, like, I built this setup, but then in a really large version, like it was 2 meters 40 long. And I used that for like 2 months when I was still living at my parents' place. But then I went on internship and I had to move to a different city in a really small room. And that's really why I built this thing. And I built it really quickly, like in 3 days time, I put it all together. That's why I call it a prototype. But then I realized that this version was way better than that massive version I had built. So that was at the beginning of 2023, like literally in the first month. But then when I moved into this apartment, I upgraded it with like a thing at the bottom where I could place the Elgato foot pedal. And so I guess it was kind of constructed between 2023 and 2024. It sounds really narcissistic in a way, but I hope that by seeing those dates, 20 years from now, maybe somebody else will be using this thing and I'll be a little bit more careful with it. So I first tested it out on a cutting board, and the marks on the cutting board, like the burn marks, were from a different project that was with a soldering iron. So I haven't had any issues with this machine yet. It has an engraving volume of 130 millimeters by 130 millimeters. I'm definitely not using that size. You can choose like different options in the software. So you can choose to have it outline something or like completely engrave the inside as well. In this case, I had it just outlined something, but I tried to mount it on the underside of the desk first. So I wanted to engrave the underside of the desk. Sadly, that wasn't really possible. Like, I used some glue clamps, I clamped it onto the underside of the desk. Everything looked like it was going to work, but the software kind of prohibited me from doing so, which is, maybe that's a good thing, I'm not sure. Yeah, eventually then I moved it to the top of the desk. I got rid of my name because I don't really want my name engraved on this thing on the top. That's way too much. Just left it with the dates. And that turned out pretty nicely. Like, I used just the outline, so it's very minimal. You don't really see it from far away, but you definitely notice it from close up, and it's just a really nice little feature to have on the desk setup. So I left a link to the Acmer S1 in the description down below. Definitely check them out. It's at a price point where it might actually be good for a gift as well. And I'm not sure if Acmer does like Black Friday deals, but it might be interesting to, check it out on Black Friday if you want to have a Christmas gift. Maybe it's a little expensive for that, but I've had a lot of fun with it, let's put it that way.